Just ahead, there's another edition of the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Al Spry, and we are going to be talking with Henry Maldonado, who is the president of the Florida Film Festival, now in its 23rd year, Reagan.
Wow, hard to believe. Henry was here with us about a year ago. It can't seem possible that an entire year has gone by. But 170 films over a 10-day period. It's incredible, and if you're a film buff, you want to hear this. Henry Maldonado will join us a little bit later in the hour. The Florida Roundtable begins following these messages. This is the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith, Public Affairs Director of the Florida News Network.
Welcome to our show. Welcome to our home. It's Al Spry. I am the political guy.
Yep.
And I want to tell you also, beyond the 80 stations we're on in Florida, we thank you for listening. You can also watch us in Orlando on Tough TV 38.
Yep.
That is over the air with the antenna. Also in select apartment complexes. And Tough TV 38 is also carried on Channel 69 on the Summit Broadband cable TV system. We will soon be on Bright House, DirecTV, Dish, and then we will take over the entire world. But for right now, we're just a humble little station. And if you can't receive Tough TV 38, I want you to get just a little bit perturbed, not angry where you're going to hurt somebody, because we don't want anyone getting hurt. But you could call your cable operator
and be
or
firm.
Your satellite operator.
Be firm with them.
Be firm but friendly,
Yeah.
and say, I want my Tough TV. Now, turning on to people who get too excited and shoot other people, which we have a plethora of in Florida.
Yes,
we seem to. I don't know if it's the heat, the easy accessibility to guns, maybe this new stand your ground law. But when I first came to Florida, I purchased a weapon. I took a weapons course, and they used to say when we took the weapons course that you had to, before you went and shot somebody, you had to try to get away from them. Maybe shooting should be more of a last resort before you were able to use deadly force.
Yeah, we'd certainly hope so.
But now it's not.
Yeah.
Now it's the first resort because you have legal protection.
Yeah.
Which is called Stand Your Ground. This was passed by the Florida legislature. It's been passed by other legislatures. I'm not crazy about it, and I'm a gun guy.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm pro-gun, so I don't want people to think, oh, Al Spry's just saying this because he's some kind of a gun control guy. Yeah. I'm really not. But I do think you need to use common sense. And when you have a law that says you don't really have to use common sense, you can just fire away if you feel threatened. Well, what's the definition of threatened? Okay, we've seen two cases where unarmed black teenagers, and this is only two of the big ones, have been shot, and the people acquitted.
Yeah, yeah.
One is, of course, Trayvon Martin, now most recently Jordan Davis. Jordan Davis was with some friends in an SUV playing some loud music, according to the guy who shot him. He got into an angry argument with the guy and, shot him. And he wasn't convicted of murder. He was just convicted of attempted murder. And the jury said one of the reasons is the stand your ground thing. So I wanted to get your take on stand your ground. What do you think of it?
Well, it needs clarification. It needs to be adjusted. There have been multiple cases. In some instances, judges here in Florida have thrown it out and told defense attorneys, no, you cannot use this. But I don't see that we have very much of an even-handed approach to this as yet. So I think that the state legislators need to go back and take another look at it and perhaps do some fine-tuning, and so that it is more specific and that judges have a better time deciding how to interpret this thing. Oh.
Yeah, I think what a lot of legislators are afraid of, though, is kind of angering the NRA and all gun supporters across Florida. Personally speaking, as a gun supporter, I think the law opens big loopholes for people. I mean, the reason why I'm bringing this up today is, of course, last week we had Reverend Al Sharpton up in the capital of Florida, Tallahassee. And, Reverend Al, he's easy to pick on, but I actually think he has a point here. The quote is, "The law is inherently wrong, whether it's an unarmed teenager in Sanford or a man in a movie theater texting his babysitter. It violates federal law." Of course, he's referring to what happened several months ago. A gentleman was texting his babysitter. A retired cop was sitting behind him. Instead of the cop just getting up and moving, he asked the guy not to text. This was, of course, during the previews, not the actual movie. The guy said, "Mind your own business." It's one freedom versus another. It ended up where the guy's dead.
Yeah, did that occurred in Pasco County, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, the cop's going to use stand your ground, and the cop will probably be acquitted.
Yeah.
Because stand your ground leaves it wide open. If you feel threatened by popcorn thrown at you or whatever, you can, or even a word or a glance, or you could say, "I feel threatened. I'm going to use deadly force," and you'll get away with murder pretty much. I don't see any other way around it.
Whatever happened to getting the manager of the theater and saying this person is being rowdy? I want him removed from the theater.
Well, it's just easier to pull out your Glock and blow the other guy away.
I hear you.
That's the thing, and it's a much different society. And when you add guns into the mix and an open law that says stand your ground, meaning you don't have to move an inch.
Yeah.
You can shoot the other guy if you're feeling threatened.
Yeah.
What's the definition of threatened? Did he call me a name? Well, now I feel threatened. He called me a name. I can kill him. Mm-hmm. And this is what we have to now, what you said.
Yeah. We need some clarification there. All right, let us pause along the network line. We'll remind you that this is the Florida Roundtable. I'm Reagan Smith.
I'm Al Spry.
We'll be joined by Henry Maldonado, the president of the Florida Film Festival, as our conversation continues. We are back. You're listening to the Florida Roundtable, the service of Florida's talk and entertainment networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Al Spry.
And Al, as promised, we are joined in the Florida Roundtable castle here by our good friend Henry Maldonado, who is the president of the Enzion Theater in Winter Park. Henry, nice to see you again, sir. And it's hard to believe a whole year has gone by. It is time for the Florida Film Festival again. Wow.
Yeah, think of it. We see each other once a year. So if we see each other 10 times, it's been 10 years.
Wow. Well,
and we also keep getting better looking each time.
Absolutely, and your shirt is terrific.
There it is. Okay. Henry, for a long time, was the vice president and general manager of Channel 6 here in Orlando. And after that, he got on the board of directors at the Enzion, and now you are the president. And so beyond that, anything we should know about you?
Well, I'm also making independent movies. I'm making documentaries, and I do a lot of video work for a lot of the arts organizations in town.
Tell me what some, I like documentaries. Tell me about some titles that you're working on and some interesting stuff.
I did a documentary last year on the Rep Theater, on their production of Hairspray, which was terrific. And I am working on a film with the Shakespeare Theater right now, where they put kids who are special education with kids who are general education, and they put in a Shakespeare play, which is an incredible piece of work.
Wow, that's really interesting stuff. So let's talk about, this is the 23rd year of the Florida Film Festival. I bet some people listening and watching out there cannot believe that it's been 23 years that you've been doing this.
23 years is a long time. Not many institutions have managed to make it that long.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the inception of the film festival, how it started, and how it's grown.
Well, the way it started was 23 years ago. Actually, about 25 years ago, there was an Orlando Film Festival. There's one now, but then there was just 1 year. And Phil Tiki and Sig Tiki, who created the Enzion Theater, saw that this is a good idea, and they liked it, but it never came back. So 2 years later, they decided, let's put on our own festival, and that's how it started 23 years ago. and it's been growing and growing and growing, and it's now considered one of the top festivals in the country. We were just voted one of the 25 coolest festivals in the world by Movie Maker magazine. And I'll tell you another one, IndieWire, which is where all the independent filmmakers go for their information, listed the top 50 in the world. And there's a picture of like a Cannes, and there's a picture of Sundance, and there's a picture of New York and Tribeca. And there, right in the middle of this, is a picture of our little barn, Enzian, as one of the top 50 festivals in the world. So we're in good company.
So top 25 coolest festivals in the world.
The world.
What makes it so cool?
I will tell you, there are some very big, gigantic, in their own way, cool festivals, like Sundance or Toronto. They're big. You can't get into parties. You have to be invited, and people are there to sell their films. Florida is very intimate. It is a festival that is very accessible. If you go to the Florida Film Festival, you're going to meet filmmakers. You're going to be able to talk to the actors in the movies. And in the end, you're going to have a very accessible experience where you're going to go home and you're going to have great stories. We have filmmakers who are all the time are hanging around Enzian. So if you go to Enzian and you didn't even know what movie you're going to go see, you will meet a filmmaker who will drag you into the theater. You will see this person's movie. You will go home with a great story. And 5 years later, which happened? Oh, that happened to be Emma Stone.
Well, and here's an interesting personal story. Last year, I went to the Florida Film Festival, and I saw 20 Feet from Stardom, and no one knew about the movie. And they had one of the singers there. I got to meet her and the director, and now it just walked away with the Best Documentary Oscar.
That is a very good example, because one of the things you have to realize about a film festival, not just ours, they're all new films. So it isn't like you know what you're going to see ahead of time. You may know a director, you may know an actress, you may know what it's about, like 20 Feet from Stardom. How could you lose? You make a movie about backup singers, you're going to get a great movie, but nobody heard of it. You were one of the first to see that movie, and you're right. A year later, they're picking up the Oscar for the movie. And if you remember, we had Mary Clayton, who sang with the Rolling Stones, sing for us at the theater last year.
Yeah. Henry, let me ask you, obviously statewide outreach and whatnot, how does a filmmaker go about getting involved in this? I mean, I'm presuming that you guys probably get more applications to be in the festival than you can handle.
Yes, we got like 2,000 applications, and we're running 170 films. So it's a bit of a decision that's really tough. The way you get into the festival is there's an application. You fill it out, you send it in. Nobody has any kind of, inroad to the festival. And then we have a committee that spends months screening all the films, and they whittle down, somewhere like 2,000 films into 170.
So really, it's a year-round project.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, the film festival preparations start, like most really big things, the day after it's over. Well, they actually take a week off.
Next one, yeah.
They start on the next one. That's right.
Wow. Well, I think that's it's amazing. Are they restricted to just Florida, or do you accept?
No. We have films from we got films applications from 76 countries, and 26 countries are represented in the festival. So they're from all over the world.
Okay. This year, some of the highlights. Anything that has jumped out at you so far that?
They're all really, really good. We have, I tend to gravitate towards the documentary because the documentaries have gotten not only so interesting, but they pick on subjects that are just over the top. There's one that is a world premiere, actually, which follows a bunch of American men who go to Russia to find brides.
Wow.
Now, you hear about them.
Yeah.
You've heard about them.
Yeah.
But you've never actually seen them do it.
Right.
In this documentary, you get to see them do it. And it's a very good documentary. The other thing we have is animation is very big at the Florida Film Festival. And it ranges from things that are wonderful for families. We have a wonderful film called Ernest and Celestine from France, which is about a bear and a mouse who become friends, and they just, it's them against the world. And then we have some movies that we have to run at midnight because, I always tell them there's something for everybody.
Yep.
We also have some stuff that is not for everybody.
Right.
But it's also very good.
Yeah. Before we, I want to do this a couple of times. The dates and the who, what, where, when, why. How do I get there? How do we get involved?
April 4th through the 13th. The best way is go to floridafilmfestival.com. Okay, that has all the films listed. It has everything. And again, these are new films, so you won't recognize any of the movies. It's not one of those movies you say, I want to see it. So if you know the directors, look for the directors or look for what the subject matter. And I guarantee you, every film is very good. And if you just go to the film festival, not even knowing what you're going to go see, I'm going to tell you what you're going to experience. You're going to sit at Eden Bar. As you know, we have one of the greatest bars in the country. A filmmaker will approach you. You'll get friends with the filmmaker. The filmmaker will convince you to see their film. You'll go home with a great story. You'll have met a filmmaker, and boom.
Well, now let me ask you this. We go to Florida Film Festival to the website, and we see these things. Can reservations be made in advance, or do you just have to show up and hope you get in? Or
Well, here's the beauty about the festival. Tickets are like $9 for the matinee and $11 for after 5 o'clock. You can buy packages of tickets where you can buy 10, 15, 20, and yes, you can then decide what films you're going to see, or you can get what we call a pass. We have one that's really terrific. It's a matinee pass. It's only $99, which sounds like a lot of money. But for $99, you get to see every and any film that's running before 5 o'clock.
Wow.
Over 10 days, that's a ton of movies.
Yeah, it is.
Or you can go to the other extreme and spend a lot more money, and literally the Platinum Pass gets you into everything, and people literally get out of your way.
Mm-hmm. And so let's talk about that a bit. Besides the movies, obviously you're going to go there for different movie times, and there's a couple different venues. Tell us about some of the other parties going on. Where can we meet the stars?
The opening night party, which is at Enzian itself, is terrific. It for me, it's my favorite party because it's at Enzian. It's a good time, and we have restaurants from all over town bringing food, so you can sample food from a lot of places, and a lot of the filmmakers are arriving at the time. So that's opening night on Friday night on the 4th. The closing party is also terrific. We have an award ceremony. We announce who the winners are. Then we have this great party, and there actually is a scary house at the party. You go through this maze of monsters. People had a great time last year. In between, we have parties for the filmmakers. We have party for the distributors. We have parties. So throughout the week, there's at least a party every night. And if you go to the website, you'll see what they are and decide. You want to meet some filmmakers? Go to the filmmakers party.
By the way, I was just watching Hoarders. That's some scary houses right there, man. Yes. People save the craziest stuff. Not to get off the tangent, but I'll tell you. So if someone has never been to the festival, maybe they're just putting their toe in the water. They just thought, I've never been to a film festival. It's only 15 minutes away. What would you recommend they do? What type of experience would you think that, because they're just trying it out, what would you recommend they purchase and just to give it a go?
First, don't be intimidated by this festival. So if you want to have a really, really great experience, go to opening night. You may not get into the movie, but you can get into the party. But if you're a little hesitant, you want to put your toes in the water, come during the week. Come in the afternoon. Don't even pick a film or pick a film. Come to Enzian and have a little wine, meet some filmmakers while you're there, and then go see the movie. During the week, it's a little less crowded. It's a little less intimidating. So that's what I would recommend if you have any hesitation. And if you do that on the week, you'll make it to the weekend because you'll realize it's not an intimidating. It's a very accommodating festival.
Now, suppose, because we're all over the state here, we got some friends that maybe in Jupiter or Stewart that want to take a ride up here, spend a couple of days. Do we have nearby hotel accommodations? Or?
There are hotels nearby, and I know people who are just in that position who take their summer vacation or their vacation from work during the festival. Mm. They come, check into a hotel, and stay here for 10 days.
Wow.
When I was working at Channel 6, I lived here, but I would take a vacation and just hang around the festival for 10 days.
And is that how you got involved? You kept hanging around, and they kept going, we can't get rid of him. We might as well just make him part of the festival.
And
that
they finally said, let's make this guy president, and that's the best way of getting him out of our hair.
And you're still hanging around.
Absolutely.
And even if they pick another president someday, I think you'll probably still be hanging around.
Listen, I'm one of those presidents, okay, like the Pope. There may be a new pope, but the old one is still hanging around. That's what I'm going to be like.
Yeah, what's up with that Pope thing? Do you think he's like over his shoulder going, hey, you're doing that wrong? What do you
No, I have a feeling he's having a great time getting all the benefits of being a pope and none of the responsibility, which is what I want. That's what I aspire to for my presidency, is to be able to sit at the Eden bar, have a glass of wine, watch a movie, and let somebody else do all the work.
I like that.
Now, when your committee starts screening these films, and we don't need to go into a whole great big detail here, but some of the parameters that they use, here comes a video, and the guy did it with his home cam or his cell phone or something, and probably hasn't got much of a chance. But what are the parameters you look for when you?
There really are no parameters in the sense of written parameters. Mm-hmm. Is this a good movie? Is this movie a movie that really captures whatever its theme is? And they break it down. People judge documentaries, they judge dramas, they judge animation. So when you're watching whatever it may be, what you're really looking to do is this film worthy of being accepted into the film festival. And that's the only parameter. I mean, we have parameters, that are technical.
Yeah.
What kind of film, video, and that kind of thing. But as far as the content of the movie, I'm telling you, there's some stuff in there I can't discuss on the radio.
Okay. So it has to move you. And then how do you guys decide how many people are in the committee, and how do you make the cut? How do you make the cut for a movie?
I don't know how many people are in a committee because it's separate committees of professionals.
Right.
And they decide. It's not a program director. It's not us. The committee decides, here are the films that are going to go into competition. And yes, we have a program director who decides, well, we can only have 10 films in that category, whatever it may be. But it's a committee who decides by themselves.
And they also decide what the featured one is, the featured main films are?
Well, we have some films that are not in competition that we invite ourselves. And that's an issue of knowing, there's a famous filmmaker, Nick Cassavetes. We wanted his film at the festival. So that is not in competition. We have several films that are there because they're films worth watching. They're brand new films, and we want you to see them, but they're not in competition. Those films are selected by a program director.
Right. That would be just a featured film.
Right. And the other thing is we also do a retro film every year. And this year it's Goldfinger. New print, Goldfinger, Sunday night. It is really a fun time.
I'm a fan.
I'm
a fan of those movies.
So we also kind of honor the classic movies.
I found in your notes one of my favorite pictures is one of your favorite pictures, and we'll go back to the late 1960s for Robert Redford and Paul Newman and Butch Cassidy.
Oh yeah.
Listen, people, I went to film school. Okay, I can talk film, and make you dizzy. And if you ask me what the best film I ever saw, I'll drop 8.5 or La Dolce Vita. If you ask me what my favorite film of all times is, it's Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. I've seen that movie like 100 times, and it never gets tired.
Well, I'm probably close behind you. There was a time when I was much younger, I used to be able to do most of the dialogue from it. Oh, the fall will probably kill you anyways.
I'll tell you a funny story. The first time I saw Butch Cassidy was at a drive-in. And I was like a teenager, and I didn't have any money, so we would sneak in at the last show. I never saw the first 20 minutes of that movie, for a year.
Yeah.
Because I always got in after the ticket taker left.
Yeah. Well, recap for us. The dates, the website.
April 4th through the 13th. Website is floridafilmfestival.com. Tickets start at $9, $11, and there's packages, and it's at Enzian Theater on Maitland Boulevard. You'll have a great time.
And we presume that they can they do ticket reservations online?
Absolutely.
On the website?
Absolutely.
Okay. Wow. Well, it sounds like it's going to be a great time. And Henry, thank you so much for coming up to see us today. We appreciate your time, as always.
I'll see you in a year.
I'm looking forward to it, sir.
Maybe we'll run into each other at the street.
Yeah. Let's hope so.
Or one of the movies. There you go.
Absolutely.
Great to see you.
This is the Florida Roundtable. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Al Spry.
And Al and I will be back in a moment. We're back. You're listening to the Florida Roundtable, the service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks, and in the Orlando area on Tough TV 38. I'm Reagan Smith.
I'm Al Spry.
And it was great fun to have Henry here with us again. I'm looking forward to that Florida Film Festival. Who knows? I'm liable to even sneak into a couple of those midnight shows,
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a great time. There's a lot of movies. I recommend, if you have not been to the Florida Film Festival, it's really a lot of fun, and you don't have to go to all the movies. It doesn't have to be, it should be a fun experience for whatever you want to make of it. In other words, go see him one movie, go see two movies, but, make it fun.
I'll date myself, Al.
Yeah.
I'm old enough to remember when the midnight movie in many theaters was Rocky Horror. He didn't show it at the regular times. You had to go at midnight on a Saturday or a Sunday night,
because it was so considered so adult back then. Of course, now it's kind of tame, but it just goes to show you how times have changed.
Times have changed,
and you can still go see that. They still do Rocky Horror here at Universal Studios.
Oh yeah,
and some of the character people dress up, and it's a lot of fun. Actually,
so. Well, the conservative people, the CPACs, got together outside of Washington a few days ago and invited in all of the various Republican possibilities for the presidential nomination in 2016. And I bring this up because Marco Rubio gave one of the major addresses.
He's a good-looking guy.
He is. There's no question about that. He is trying to recover from the missteps that befell him in his immigration proposals that kind of fell flat on their face. And so this time around, multiple-faceted approach to many different problems. And when all was said and done, Rand Paul, the senator from Kentucky, came out number one choice. They did a straw poll after everybody had spoken. Rand Paul came out number one. Last year, Rand Paul was number one. Marco Rubio was number two. This year, Marco Rubio came in seventh. Now, some of the other things that they did that I thought were interesting.
From number two that's 5 places down.
Yeah. And I don't know whether you'd consider that good or bad after the stumble that he made with the immigration business.
I think it's bad. To go from 2 to 7.
Yeah.
Number one, it's interesting about CPAC. I didn't even know what CPAC was for a few years ago. It never got any press. All of a sudden, CPAC gets all this press. It's kind of interesting in this country because we've kind of gone more to the edges, and now CPAC gets a lot of press. Of course, Marco looks really good, and the reason why I say that is, well, I have a saying, of course, politics is for people who are too ugly to be in Hollywood, so they go into politics because they can't make showbiz.
Yeah.
They're not like, we're studs, right? But these guys are, they're not normally good to look at. I give you in point, Ted Cruz is not an attractive man.
Right.
Mitch McConnell looks like a turtle. Harry Reid, I'll hit the other side too. He's not an attractive man.
No,
of course, no. Nancy Pelosi, she says way too much work done, as they say. No. So we have Marco who speaks well, and he's a product of the American dream, and he looks good. That's why he was number 2 last year. But the gaffe, like you said, with immigration. Immigration is one of those conservative issues. It's like abortion. It's like one of these point issues where you're either for it or against it. I guess there's no nuance there. You either want to give people amnesty who have been in the country, or you want to just kick them all out.
Yeah. One of the interesting things that they did this year, last year, New Jersey's Governor Chris Christie was not even invited to come and make a speech. This year, they had him in, and they were respectful and whatnot. But underlying all of this is this continuing disagreement within the Republican Party of who do you nominate in 2016? Do we get somebody that has got essential conservative credentials who can appeal to the center? Or do we just go over to the right and take somebody who says, the hell with the center, we're over here, and that's it? Which I think if they did...
they'll lose.
You remember President McCain.
Right.
And you also remember President Romney.
President Goldwater.
Yeah. So...
short terms.
Yeah.
Reagan, they need to take your namesake's advice and put up the big tent.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Not the little tent, because you can't fit many people in a little tent.
Yeah, they would do well to go back and look at many of the speeches that Ronald Reagan gave during those years.
I'll tell you what happens with the extremes on both sides, and then we'll go to break. On the left and the right, too much ego, too much focus on well, I'm right and you're wrong, and there's no room for gray areas. Of course, we've talked about this in the past. If you don't find common ground with the average American who's just looking to make his life better, and if you're just an ideologue who's going to stick to your guns until you drop, you're not going to be successful.
Yeah.
You're not going to be successful. You'll be successful with a small minority. Think Tea Party. Think Occupy Wall Street. You'll be successful with those guys and gals.
Yeah.
You will not be
it.
successful with the average American who is the heartland of America, who's just looking for the American dream, a better life. But I think when you get too tied into specific issues, you lose the center, because then your whole ego is tied up with gun control.
Yeah.
Your whole ego is tied up with immigration, or it's tied up with abortion, or it's tied up with religion. So you see what I mean.
And neither political party in this country can win without carrying a big chunk of the center. That's it. So, all right, you're listening to the Florida Roundtable. I'm Reagan Smith.
I'm Al Spry.
We'll continue our conversation in a moment. From Pensacola to Key West and all points in between, you're listening to the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. And in the Orlando area, we are seen 3 times a week on Tough TV 38. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Al Spry. Welcome back. Great to be here with you, Reagan.
Always a pleasure, sir.
Now let's talk about since the legislature is in session again. Of course, this is always an interesting time when our legislature meets. And, of course, they're playing a little catch-up. And I'm referring, of course, to the medical marijuana legislation, which is now going through the House, a watered-down version of medical marijuana that was also actually recently passed in Georgia for a certain strain of marijuana called Charlotte's Web, which is supposed to help kids with certain ailments relating to muscular dystrophy and so forth. And it's not supposed to make you high, though, Unlike alcohol, which does make you completely blotto out of your mind. Cigarettes, of course, give you a buzz. But, the legislator is trying to make the marijuana not have any effect whatsoever, because gosh knows nobody wants anyone to have any kind of that kind of feeling, because it's wrong. So, the interesting thing about this legislative push is the legislature wasn't talking marijuana at all before John Morgan hopped on board with the medical marijuana initiative, which became now, of course, the medical marijuana amendment, which will be voted on in the fall. You couldn't get a bill discussed. You couldn't even get no one even said the word marijuana up in Tallahassee.
And all of a sudden,
everybody is lighting up, and they're saying, you know what, we're gonna do this for the people of Florida. No, you're doing this to try to head off an amendment, which I think has a really great chance of passing, which will give medical marijuana to people so they're not having to buy it from some dealer in a sketchy neighborhood or have to buy it through a friend. I know several people who had cancer. Medical marijuana gave them their appetite back after horrendous bouts of chemotherapy.
Sure.
But they had to buy it through the black market because they couldn't get it here in Florida. And I think, you know what? Let's take an adult attitude towards this. Okay? It's a plant. It's been medicinal for thousands of years. Only in the last 40 years has it been really criminalized.
Yeah.
It used to be in medications. Patent medicines had it in it. People used it responsibly. And then it was demonized, of course, starting with the war on drugs and Nixon. And, of course, we have this failed war on drug policy. We have people in jail for selling small amounts of marijuana that are in jail for 10, 20, 30 years. It's obviously time that we rethink this nonsense. And, of course, you have all the control freaks. You have the sheriffs and the police spokesmen, many of them, not all of them. Some of them are actually taking a responsible line on this, saying, oh, the children. They always bring up the children. The children are going to get it. We can't have the children get it. Oh, how is that different than the children popping open the Xanax and selling it to each other in school, mom and dad Xanax, or the oxycodone that they're getting? Okay, anything can be abused, but if you use a comprehensive education program along with the legislation, and it is for medical marijuana, it doesn't open it up all the way like it's doing in Colorado and Washington. I see no reason why everyone has to be run around like chickens with their head cut off on this.
I'm with you 100% on that, Al. I really am. It's kind of like the chicken and the coop and the fox and who's out the door and better head it off. It all smacks of phony to me.
I think so. I just think, and I understand how well-intentioned people are. That they have had personal experiences of people driving drunk, and they're afraid people are going to smoke and drive and all this and other. But like I said, not everybody drinks and drives. Not everybody's going to smoke and drive. People, as long as you would educate people, I don't see an issue with this. It's to me, marijuana is no different than, like the president said, that no different than having a beer. To what I've seen, and I'm not. This is no way a Schedule I drug like it was classified by the DEA back in the late '60s. Yeah. This is not akin to cocaine or methamphetamine or heroin. If we're talking those drugs, well, that's a different conversation. But if you're talking marijuana, I just think that it's disingenuous, like you said, of the legislature to now play catch up on this with a certain strain of marijuana. Yeah. Well, to me, it's just a bit laughable.
Yeah. Well, aside from that, with the Florida legislature in session, we used to, and now they're also arguing over what kind of tax cuts we're going to get and where they're going to do refunds and whatnot. But for years, all the years I've lived here, anytime they're in session, I urge people to watch your wallet.
Well, they won't have to cut taxes. They won't have to raise taxes, obviously, if they get revenue from medical marijuana. There's another reason.
Sure.
I'm glad you brought that up.
All right. This is the Florida Roundtable. I'm Reagan Smith.
I'm Al Spry.
We'll be back with a closing thought following these messages. This is the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks, and in Orlando on Tough TV 38. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Al Spry. So happy to be wearing my Tough TV shirt. I can't. I love showing it off. I want to talk about. This is an interesting story. It's not specifically in Florida, but it's funny, sad but funny. It's one of those bittersweet stories. We have a lady named Pia Fahrenkopf. She is a German immigrant, 49 years old, died in 2008. No one checked on her, though, for all these years. She was getting money taken out of her accounts, so her lawn was getting cut. The electric was on. Nobody really paid much attention. It was only after a contractor who was working at the home, which is going through foreclosure, obviously because she stopped paying her mortgage. And this is in, of course, Metro Detroit area.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in Detroit. They finally found her. But the interesting thing about this story, and why I'm bringing it up, is she voted in the November 2010 gubernatorial election.
Maybe she knew Richard Daley Sr. or Lyndon Johnson.
Now, of course, this is the perfect story for people to use who want to require ID for voters, because, and of course, if you have to require an ID, the dead people will not find it as easy to vote. Well, You know what I say, Reagan? I'm for dead people voting rights. I think even if you're dead, you should still have the right to speak your mind.
Vote early and vote often, even if you're dead. Gee whiz.
Of course, they're calling it, the officials, an administrative error that Miss Fahrenkopf, the late Miss Fahrenkopf, was voting in the 2010 election some 2 years after she
Well,
passed
somebody had figured out that she wasn't going to be voting herself.
but doesn't say who she voted for or who her disembodied spirit voted for. I should
really.
say. In all fun, of course, it's very sad to. The sad part of the story is, number one, the lady passed away, and number two, nobody checked on her for
all those years,
6 years.
Yeah.
So
amazing.
it just goes to show you.
Yeah. Well, it is time for us to run up the white flag here, Al, and we'll call this one a show, I guess. We do want to say thank you for your time this week. We know you have lots of choices out there, and we're glad when you settle with us for a few minutes each weekend. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Al Spry.
We'll see you next week with another edition of the Florida Roundtable.
You've been listening to Florida Roundtable, a weekly look at issues and problems of concern to Floridians from a state, national, and international perspective. Presented by the Florida News Network with your hosts, Reagan Smith and Al Spry. The views and opinions expressed during the preceding program are solely those of the participants and not necessarily those of this station's ownership, management, or sponsors of FNN. Your views and opinions are welcome. Address your card or letter to Florida Roundtable in care of Reagan Smith, 2500 Maitland Center Parkway, Suite 407, Maitland, Florida, 32751. Or you may email reagansmith@fnnonline.com. Thank you for listening, and please join us again next week for another edition of Florida Roundtable.